It's finally here. Yes, the Steam Winter Sale. And I just blew over $200 real fucking dollars on that, so it's time to recoup my losses. I'm not joking about that either. I actually did. Look, I cannot be trusted with a debit card. My dubious spending habits aside, let's get this video started because I don't like wasting time. The first game we'll be talking about today isn't really a game at all. Rather, we'll be talking about a trilogy, that being the the Tasmanian Tiger trilogy. Now, some of you may be asking, Furry, why does this game look like it was made with less polygons than Sega uses for Rouge the Bat's itty bitty bat titties? That's because, my dear viewer, these games originate from the far-off year of the early 2000s, made for this thing called the PS2. Unlike the modern PS5, this thing actually had games on it, and the Tasmanian Tiger were some of them. This game is all about a tiger in Australia, of all places, as he usually fights against his nemesis, the cassowary boss Cass. Okay, so I looked it up, and that's apparently because Thai is based on this thing called a thylacine, which was known as the Tasmanian Tiger. So yeah, that makes way more sense than what I was thinking. The plot itself is very cartoony, not inviting you to take anything seriously, and that's to its benefit. The graphics certainly don't help, but it's a collectathon like Banjo-Kazooie and Mario, so it'd feel weird if it was realistic. The gameplay itself doesn't change much between games. A big core part of it is running around as Thai and using a variety of boomerangs to kill enemies and solve puzzles. A big part of what makes me like the Tasmanian Tiger, aside from the fact that I played it during my childhood, is the aesthetic. You know how anime almost always have those exaggerated sense of America, where everyone has a flag on their wall and a cow skull on their shelf? It's like that, but for Australia, and that's part of what makes the Tasmanian Tiger so much fun. The second one is probably the best, and the third one is probably the worst. I won't speak about the fourth game because I haven't played it at all, so whatever. The next game I'd like to talk about is one I recently made a whole video about. It's called Ovis Loop. This is an early access action roguelike that plays similarly to Kelly Potter Dead Cells, where it's a 2D hack and slash with Dark Souls dodges. What Ovis Loop excels at is pure frantic chaos. This is not a game where you think through your actions, this is one where you let your reflexes do everything for you. And the combat is a ton of fun, with a really unique way of handling skills where instead of being replaced entirely, it's like new ones are added on top of them. I'm showing my fighting game ass here a bit, but basically, instead of replacing a skill with a new one, you're given the chance to turn it into a Rekka, allowing for a new move to be used immediately after the first. As a roguelike, it is like a lot of others mechanically, but the neatest feature in my opinion is that you see the entire path ahead of time, letting you plan out your route. The story and setting is pretty cool and unique. It's all about a meteor that crash lands and how the inhabitants react. In fact, it's pretty easy because the game just straight up has a conspiracy board with lines connecting all the disparate pieces of information so you know what's going on. It's like Dark Souls with being very indirect with its storytelling, where you have to pick up scattered pieces across the world, but it's not impossible to follow. The game may be in early access, but it's only getting better. The next game we'll be covering is The Use of Life. It's a small indie project that just left early access a month or two ago. It follows the only survivor of a dragon attack, and it's all about player choices. Goj can choose either life or power, preserve his own life at all costs, or seek to get stronger at all costs, and it's these two flames which decide which ending you will get. I haven't actually gotten too far into the story or experienced all the varying routes, so I can't talk about that, but what I can talk about is the gameplay. Firstly, it's a bit like one of those RNG RPGs where you go from place to place to find an interactable, and based on your stats, your odds of succeeding or failing vary. It's a situation that has you asking yourself, is it worth taking the risk for a reward that may not be worth it? For combat, it's a turn-based RPG, but it also has some QTE elements with its dodge system. If you get it right, you dodge the attack perfectly, and the more off from the marker, the more damage you take. Critical attacks aren't even random, they happen when you severely fuck up a dodge, like press the wrong button. What's cool is that you can actually see the enemy's attacks before they happen, either showing you the move's name, the dodge direction, or even if there are 2 or 3 dodges in that single move. But you'll almost never get all that information at once, but you can infer based on remembering a move's name and thus remembering how to dodge, which is a really cool expression of player skill. But then you also have the class and your stats, which are leveled up separately. You get a class stat when you truly level up, but you get stat experience when you accomplish any task, letting you progress your stats without requiring a genuine level up. A detail I really like is that you do recover a small bit of magic every turn. That way, even if you are doing a physical build, you don't run out of magic that quickly. And hell, even if you are doing a magic build, you can't lock yourself out of attacking. Also, you should tune in for the stream after I upload this video because it'll be super good, I promise. Also, like and subscribe and check out my Ko-fi and Patreon. I wasn't really sure if I should cover these next games because they're super popular, but also because it's debatable whether or not they're even furry. Some would say that bugs aren't furry, they aren't even scaly. Others would say that Hornet has our own tag on E621, so fuck it, it counts. Have you ever heard of this small indie Metroidvania called Hollow Knight? It's full of bugs, but in a good way. I really don't know what I can say about this game that hasn't already been said. You know Metroid and Castlevania, or at least the 2D ones, right? This game does the same thing, but with its own unique spin. It takes some cues from Dark Souls with its lore and gameplay, but notably with its setting, which has that vibe of a once majestic world that has already seen its last breaths. I genuinely don't have any complaints about Hollow Knight. It gets a perfect 10 out of 10 from me if I'm being honest. In fact, it's so good, I will henceforth be renaming all Metroidvanias into Hollow Knight likes. And now let's get to the game, whose protagonist I always see drawn with thick thighs and even thicker titties, despite the fact that they are a stick with a literal beer belly in Silksong, the sequel to Hollow Knight. You can tell that Team Cherry has learned from their previous work, because to some extent it's far more experimental and can see more original ideas shining through. Hollow Knight was oft compared to Dark Souls, and it was an apt comparison. However, any comparisons made to Dark Souls and Silksong are really just holdovers from Hollow Knight. Silksong doesn't have any invincible dodge maneuver and is far more fast-paced. It has features that you wouldn't expect to come from the follow-up to Hollow Knight, like the ability to change your moveset with Crest, side quests that are treated like ones from a traditional RPG rather than just meeting characters in specific locations. Instead of being set in a dying world with very obscure storytelling, the world of Silksong is alive with entire settlements of NPCs and has a very vocal protagonist. I actually feel that's what makes Silksong a step up from Hollow Knight, how it has so much more of its own identity. I'm gonna keep this short so I won't speak about the gameplay, and besides, it's Hollow Knight and Silksong. You probably already own these games if I'm being totally honest, so I'm just gonna say it's 10 out of 10, one of the best Hollow Knight likes out there. It's winter, so it's time for me to chill Night in the Woods again, since that game ends in the winter and this time of year always gets me in the feels for that game. I've talked about it before, so I'm keeping this brief. It's a story-driven game about May as she comes back home after dropping out of college. It's essentially a visual novel if it was a platformer, where a lot of what you'll be doing is simply reading. That's not a bad thing, since the story is very gripping, as these characters navigate their lot in life with tragedies that are absolutely outside of their control, be they mundane things or seemingly magical and cosmic in nature. It's a game that matters a lot to me. I remember most strongly finishing it in my first year of college, and it will always stick with me. And also a quick shout out to Tunic, since it was published by the same people. A game I super recommend is Death's Door. Okay, slight side note because this is bothering me, but Death's Door is like the worst fucking name for a VA to say, oh my god. Not only does this thing have two plosives with a hard D, but it also has an S on the end, which is really hard not to draw out and fuck up on the mic, but that S is tied to a TH, which makes it miserable to actually say. This game is an isometric adventure game that kind of reminds me of The Legend of Zelda. You play as a nameless crow who collects expired souls. However, when the soul you're supposed to collect ends up behind a mysterious locked door, the only way to break it open is to collect the 4 Lord souls. I don't actually think they're given a group name. I played this game a while ago and I still have the footage despite never making a video about it. I remember it really sticking with me thanks to its themes of death and what it means, which I probably should have expected from a game called... I'm not putting myself through that again. Its gameplay is sharp and snappy with nice variety to it to make it more than just a hack and slash like the bow or hookshot. I'd also have to shout out the game's music because I still listen to boss tracks from it to this day. Speaking of games that mean a lot to me that I probably should have mentioned after Night in the Woods but kind of forgot to do, my bad. Have you ever heard of the visual novel Echo? This one isn't actually a part of the Steam summer sale, but I want to talk about it, so I'm doing it anyway. Besides, you can download it for free to your phone or PC from itch.io. I'll leave a link to it in the description for you lazy fucks who can't be bothered to Google it. This game is similar to Night in the Woods, since it's about Chase Hunter as he returns to his bumfuck nowhere town of Echo to reconnect with some of his old friends. The problem is that there's some heavy trauma lingering in all their past, some of it shared, most of it not, and it just keeps them from having a good time. However, it seems like the very town itself is working against them, driving them and other residents into the depths of madness. It's slow at first, but it will definitely hit you later on as the entire town and characters you know and love lose their minds. The game is broken up into routes by all the members of the main cast you can hang out with: TJ, Jenna, Leo, Flynn, and Carl. Each of them are very different, covering the alternate ways the same events can happen for a variety of reasons, and the way those minor differences lead into things that are entirely new and unique. It does take a second to get there after the prologue, which serves as an introduction for the core cast. I do think you should do every route at least, since that's the way you get the full story of every detail. Echo is also fairly long because of this, so will take up a decent chunk of your time. Don't let the time commitment stop you though, because Echo is truly a wonderful visual novel. I'd be remiss if I didn't shout out the entire Fuga franchise on this video. It's part of the wider Little Tales of Bronx series, which includes cult classics like Solo Turbo on the DS, which I will recommend you play. Good luck finding a physical copy though, since that shit is expensive. Back to talking about Fuga though, these games are all centered around the ancient superweapon, the Taranis, first found by children as they wage war against the dog Nazis to save their families. While the story is good, it is also loaded, so the real draw for Fuga is its superb gameplay. It's a turn-based RPG that's very unique since it's all done from the inside of a tank. Of course, the tank itself has one health bar, but each of your characters gets an action and a different weapon. By cleverly targeting the enemy and paying attention to the turn order, you can delay your enemies to control the flow of battle. But you don't just have 3 characters, those are just the ones in the lead. You also have the 3 behind them for support, which can further modify the battle and circumstances. The big deal about Fuga is the dreaded Soul Cannon. It can end any fight in one swift and powerful attack, but at the cost of one of your characters' lives. In the first game, it's easy to avoid, but it gets harder and harder when the decision's taken out of your hands in the later entries. So it creates this wonderful and genuine pressure to do well. I've talked about it more in one of the most popular videos on my channel, so do go ahead and check that out. This is actually where I'm going to end the video, mostly because I'm beginning to run out of new games I haven't talked about before, and I hate doing repeat entries. But first, really quick, let me recommend a few games that I haven't necessarily played, but I think look really cool. Mostly because I literally just bought them during this sale and have had like no time to play them. We've got the Sam & Max games, which are 3D point and clickies. We've got Wander Stars, which is an anime-inspired RPG. We've got Eden's Last Sunrise, which is a tactical RTS. And we've got Moonlight Pulse, which is a pretty sick Metroidvania. This is where we will end things for today, but I'll also tell you to check out my channel and check out some of the other games I mentioned, because odds are they are also on sale right now. Now let's really quick do our Patreon shoutouts to Wolfrix, McCoides, Garen LaFay, Charon, and Zora Chow. Welcome to the Garden of Slaughter. Thank you for watching. Do be sure to like, subscribe, and check out my Ko-fi and Patreon. As always, this is Furry signing out.